All right, Jennifer, I know you hate me talking about you, but I'm going to be talking about you, sorry. So, many of you know Jennifer Dorian and the leadership she provides in our community, but I wanted to remind you all of something that she has done that I think has created a lasting legacy. And that is in June of 2020, when she and her friend Betsy Armentrout saw a vital need to support the next Georgia election cycle by engaging and convening Georgia businesses to rally resources, educate employees, and encourage early voting. Jennifer and Betsy co-founded GeorgiaVotingWorks.org from their homes as community volunteers and convened over 20 companies to support early voting, election preparedness for a safe, smooth voting process. You all will remember that as this year's Vice President of Community Service, Jennifer was instrumental in our club's season of service in and around the elections last year, which Secretary Raffensperger gratefully acknowledged. Jennifer has also served as Program Committee Chair. David Romer, you know what it's like to be Program Committee Chair. So thank you for showing us how to engage and impact and put service above self. We are really looking forward to your conversation with Lois Reitzes today, and thank you for everything you've done for this club.
I vote that's the last time he tells us that story. It's very, very nice. Well, everybody here as Rotarians cares about service above self, and I'm so glad we can be here together today to celebrate a woman among us who has a 45-year career of serving the Atlanta community, Lois Reitzes, here today. Like many of you, I have had the pleasure of listening to Lois most of my life on the radio, but I've also had the chance the last 4 years to work with Lois as a colleague, and I can tell you there are so many delightful aspects to working with Lois. Not only is she a champion for arts and culture, but she is a person who models learning, growing, and transforming. She is a person who is a model of excellence and preparation, which we will be going into. And she is very well known, and we enjoy her warmth and her humor. So I'm sure all those qualities are going to come through today. Joel, I brought along some slides in Lois's favorite color. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, born in Evanston, we can't claim her as a native, y'all. Born in Evanston, Illinois, raised in Chicago, Lois's early years were steeped in the sounds of classical music in her home, whether attending concerts with her mother, listening to classical radio stations, or playing piano. Lois has seen music as a lifelong companion to her life. Her journey into the world of music was a natural progression, earning her a BA in music from the Chicago Music Conservatory, a very esteemed music conservatory, one of like 3 in the United States. Yes, better take a seat. We have a lot to say about you, Lois. And that was a part of the Roosevelt University, and she received that degree in '75, followed by graduate studies at the prestigious Indiana University School of Music, also giving her a great team to cheer for in basketball. Her professional path took its first step at WABE in 1979, marking the beginning of a remarkable and impactful career in public radio. Many of us in here recognize the show Second Cup, 9 o'clock on every weekday. And that was really just, Lois was also programming the entire station night and day as it was dedicated to classical music. As you may know, she was also the programming director. And she did indeed become a trusted guide to the vibrant world of classical music. In 2015, lots of people in this room may remember, WABE transitioned from full-time classical music to more spoken word format. And yet we were able to put classical music on our HD2 channel, where Lois has been the programming director, as well as she pioneered a new show for us, City Lights, which has been on the air for 10 years. And I can tell you that most artists in Atlanta do not consider themselves to have arrived in Atlanta until they've been interviewed by Lois Reitzes. That is a known thing. She has brought to all of us so many performing artists, visual artists, music, theater, authors, and she's really been a person who keeps our fingers on the creative pulse of the city. It's her commitment to her craft and to the cultural life of Atlanta that has earned admiration of her by so many of us and so many patrons of the arts who appreciate her amplifying the importance of art in Atlanta. I love her depth of knowledge, warmth, enthusiasm, And you guys would love the generations of people that know Lois Reitzes. I know you're thinking that it's an older skewing crowd. You have to be at the symphony orchestra on a Saturday night and see the middle schoolers lining up to get selfies with Lois Reitzes. Because she is a classical music icon, and you are still inspiring generations of people to be in touch with their art form. So I'm so delighted to bring Lois up. Let's give her a Rotary Club welcome. I think she knows how to use a microphone. So Lois, we want to hear the sound of your voice. Where can you introduce us here?
Good afternoon. And thank you for welcoming me to Rotary of Atlanta.
Yes. Love that voice. And that is why she is a Georgia radio legend. That was one of the most recent awards that she was given from our industry. So, Joel, I think the next slide will be the best backdrop. Perfect. Look at that, 45 years. So Lois, let's start at the very beginning. What was your house brimming with music? What happened? How'd you get lit up a fire for classical music?
Well, it started with music that was not classical. I am 10 years younger than my brother, and I was 12 years younger than my sister. And the music that was playing was Elvis Presley. So I was 3 and went to the piano in our living room and plinked out, "You ain't nothing but a hound dog." And my parents were stunned. I mean, my mother said, "Joe, Mozart." And I thought, Mozart, Presley. But I have perfect pitch. It's the only thing about me that's perfect, and I can't even take credit for it because you don't have to have perfect pitch to be a musician. And there may be people who have it who don't even know they have it, but it served me well. And for as long as I can remember, music has been my way of experiencing the world. And my mom always had the radio on. When I was growing up in Chicago, there were 3 classical stations. Now there is one, but it was the major of the 3. And I connected with that. And my parents started me on piano lessons at 5. I used to feel, I had very mixed feelings because as a little kid, I couldn't sing in the choruses or be in the school plays because I was always asked to play the piano. But it really was a glorious introduction to music and radio.
Yeah, so as a pianist, you studied at conservatory. What was the fork in the road like for you to stare down a career as a professional performer or a person in the industry in music curation, music history, music scholarship?
I think that I was not temperamentally cut out for performance. I was never competitive. In fact, I loved cheering on the next person and never had that, I can do better than that kind of feeling. And I don't know that I was that good a performer, but what I really connected with was WFMT, the way that the announcers, I was an insomniac as a teenager even, and I used to listen to the radio overnight, and the way they shared their love of music, I thought, what can I do? How do I get there? And so, as an undergraduate, I had a double major in piano and music history. In grad school, I studied musicology, although I still took piano lessons. But my real professional training was at the NPR affiliate in Bloomington, Indiana, where I was hired my first week, and it's the only other experience I've ever had in broadcasting. So 2 years in Bloomington at WFIU, where, by the way, I had the privilege of being during the 1976 undefeated season of the IU Hoosiers under Bobby Knight. It was a glorious thing. And Jennifer, I know you would not approve, but I was involved in a little bit of mischief the night of that glorious championship.
Do tell.
I put on a Bruckner symphony, and a very long symphony. I don't know if Natalie talked about conducting Bruckner when she was here, but we wheeled in a TV to watch the championship. And you can do both.
So I see a career in sportscasting next. Yeah, right? You're going to get some sports in there. That's fabulous. Well, I don't want to just bypass what a great fortuitous turn that was for the world, because you had great self-knowledge as a young person to say, I may not be the greatest performer, but boy, I can be the best champion. And I've heard you talk about wanting everyone at a competition to win, and they're all so special. And I mean, it's really a big heart for all of the artists. So have you had many emotional connections with the artists that you've interviewed through the years?
Oh my God, yes.
Seems like you're really cheering for everybody.
What a privilege it has been. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the pianist Van Cliburn. Okay. He won the 1958 Tchaikovsky competition, the Tchaikovsky International Piano Competition, and it was the first time an American had ever won. And they gave him a ticker tape parade down Wall Street when there was ticker tape. And he has been, credited with a little thaw in the Cold War there. But when I was a little kid, my parents took me to hear him when he came to Atlanta in 1994, and I got to interview him. For all of you who have heard, don't meet your heroes, they will disappoint. He did not disappoint. And I spent 3 days with him. It was sensational.
I just heard your interview with David Kucheron. You've interviewed him many times, and Julie, and so you're very wired in to the current scene. How has symphony orchestra changed in Atlanta in 45 years?
Well, the whole art scene has continued to grow and evolve. And when we moved to Atlanta because of my husband's job, he finished his PhD and he got a job offer from Georgia State University. And the first thing he said to me was, "It's in Atlanta." And I said, "Okay, that's good." And he said, "They have a wonderful symphony." And I knew that. And that was important. That was the first subscription here. But we have been so fortunate, and it has to do with great leadership, to have people at the helm who have enabled our arts institutions to grow, to thrive, and to get recognition internationally. I'm going to embarrass him, I know, but Tomer's Balloon is here. Yes. I mean, the Atlanta Opera is extraordinary and continues to gain attention globally. We have this botanical garden that attracts world-renowned artists. The theater scene has really been extraordinary to watch, because talk about a lesson in the beauty of collaboration versus competition. When Susan Booth became artistic director of the Alliance Theater, and she moved down here, she's now at the Goodman Theater in Chicago, and really didn't want to leave the Alliance, but her first job was at the Goodman. She met her husband at the Goodman. The Goodman comes asking you, you don't say no. When Susan moved here, the first thing she did was she invited every other artistic director of a theater, regardless of its size, to the Alliance and said, how can we work together? And I think it's that kind of willingness to collaborate. Do I see Sheffield? There's Sheffield. Okay. Yes, we have collaborations going on at the History Center with the opera. The Emory Chamber Music Society goes to Fernbank. You know, we've all been to the Ray Charles I hope you've been to the Ray Charles Performing Arts Center at Morehouse. Dwight Andrews at First Church and Emory is a triple crown. We have extraordinary people in this city, and I think that's why it's so important to support our arts institutions and public media. Can tell I'm very last century. I still say broadcasting. Because without this spiritual nourishment, we won't be full. Our hearts can't be full. And you know, people can support in different ways. It's not all about how many zeros are after a number, although
some zeros help.
We'll take that check. But voting, advocacy for arts education. I learned recently that you cannot graduate from their equivalent of what we call high school in Finland without passing a test that shows you can read music. I mean, how cool is that? You know? This is amazing. I have digressed. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And so what you mentioned that our art scene has grown tremendously, that we're collaborating a lot, and that there's a good amount of support. So I would echo that experience. I'm curious, when you went from being a classical music programming director to running an arts and culture broader program in 2015, you had to take on new subject matter where you didn't have a degree in theater formally. You didn't have a degree in visual arts. So how did you take on that new challenge and grow?
Well,
were you scared?
No.
Okay.
how much time do we have to wrap up at 1?
No.
Oh, good. Because I want to share a story with you that Scott Simon once told. Scott Simon, you may know from NPR, he hosts Saturday Weekend Edition. This was maybe 15 years ago. His little girls go to a fancy school in DC. It's not the Friends School, I don't know the name of it, but there was a, what do your parents do at work morning in his older daughter's class. Maybe it was a take your parent to work day, but one of the little kids said, "My daddy runs the World Bank," or, something to that effect. And the other one said, "My mommy is at the National Institutes for Health, and she cures people of diseases." And they went around, with these very impressive parents and their careers in DC. And they got to Scott's daughter and asked her, "What does your daddy do?" And she shrugged her shoulders and said, "He talks." He talks. And so that's what I think. So but in going from music, which is the area I know best, to other aspects of the arts, which is where I spend my leisure time and my exercise time. Ha ha ha. My doctor doesn't think it's funny when I tell him my favorite form of exercise is reading. But when I would go downtown to take my piano lessons, I always stopped at the Art Institute before my lessons. And my parents gave me a love of theater starting very young. The Goodman in Chicago, and then I was privileged to go to New York and take in Broadway. Attended my first opera at the Lyric when I was 11. Grace Bunbury sang Carmen. And I love theater and film. I really would have, I don't know if I could say I would have loved, but I adore theater, and I would love to have been a Broadway hoofer, a la Bernadette Peters or Catherine Zeta-Jones, but that wasn't what I was cut out for. I can talk, and I love talking about the arts and arts-related
disciplines. And we're glad that you do and that you can, and you certainly can. Well, I should have asked you, what would you do if you hadn't been the Lois Reitzes we know? So you would have been a dancer on Broadway. I like it.
Dancer, singer, have to sing.
Now, you told me you had a great line, you're not about the great outdoors.
No, I love the great indoors. My husband doesn't like that. He once said something. I think I made the great mistake on a wedding anniversary of saying, "If you could change anything about me, what would it be?" And he said, "Maybe for you to be a little bit more outdoorsy." And I thought, oh, that was the wrong answer. So yes, I love the great indoors.
We'll get some outside artistry performances for you. That will work. So I did some math, and I think you have highlighted in the last 10 years over 2,000 local artists.
That is mind-blowing.
From Atlanta and across the country. Are any famous names we should remember that you've had a chance to interview even more than once?
Oh, yes. Wow.
One of my favorites was Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler was so dear, and a marvelous example of overcoming adversity because he is still severely dyslexic, and in fact was so reading challenged when he was already doing Happy Days that he was not comfortable doing table reads with scripts. He did not know what dyslexia was until he was in his 30s, and his son has it. But he has since become an advocate for reading challenges, for dyslexia education, and writes a series of books about a little boy named Hank who is funny, and that's how he overcomes his adversity.
And then I always hear you, Ethan Hawke likes to bring things to you first.
That was pretty amazing. One of my favorite interviews is Coleman Domingo.
Yes.
I think he is one of the greatest actors we have today. And Kenny Leon brought him to me 2014, maybe? Yeah, he was directing a show. I thought he should have won the Academy Award for Rustin, and I didn't think he could ever surpass that. But I don't know if any of you have seen Sing Sing. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. He matched it. Yo-Yo Ma, I think, has a halo.
Yes.
This man, he should be the emperor of the world. I mean, we would all be so well off.
Absolutely. Well, I know 4 other things you love that start with an M. Will you share? This is Lois's curation of 4 of the greatest things in life, and I know you need to know this before we wrap up. So what are the 4 M's in your life, Lois?
Mozart, Muppets, Motown, and Mel Brooks. There is a brilliant artist.
It's a pretty awesome curation. You can see why she was ready for City Lights. Well, do we have time, sir, for a question from the audience? If there's anybody.
Thank you for bringing your iconic voice to Rotary today. Who has questions?
And while there's a question coming, raise your hand if you've been interviewed by Lois. I know there's a lot of people in this room. Okay, so the arts and culture section over there, thank you.
Lois, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. They talk about your musical career, but they forgot to mention one thing. She is an excellent cook. We've been to your house, you invited us, the food was good. I think you cooked it, am I right?
You are right.
Let's give a round of applause.
That's good to hear. Well, that makes me think, was that the comment? There's more. I was just going to say, that makes me realize we should do something with cooking with Lois in her retirement.
Well, thank you for reminding me. My question to you is, you talk about your musical career. Do you have any comment about the financial ups and downs we are going through? How it's going to end up in the next couple of months?
We've got about 10 minutes for that one.
Yeah, right.
I wish I understood it better. And you must understand, RK, I never had a liberal arts education. I had a music education. So I never had liberal arts, much less economics. But it seems like everything that is going on is the antithesis of what would make our economy better. So I certainly can't offer a cure.
So luckily we can tag team today. So I think some of the critical facts as Atlantans you'd want to know is that 10% of WABE's funding comes from the federal government. So we're so fortunate to have 90% community funding for our public radio airwaves and public safety net and arts and culture and local news. So we would be certainly harmed, but we would continue to go on. I think most local stations may come through, but there are stations in rural areas where 50% of their budget comes from the federal government, so that would be very damaging. And I don't know about you, but I want people all over the country to have access to information. And I think it does look likely that NPR and PBS are going to have a hard time. So we may all wind up relying on our local stations for local news, and maybe there'll be a network of local community news that can flow up like an Associated Press of old.
Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for your leadership in public broadcasting. Is that what we call it?
Sure.
Any other questions for today's panel? Yes, ma'am.
Not a question, but I think we'd all love to hear you say welcome to Second Cup.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Welcome to WABE's Second Cup concert.
Beautiful. I have one final remark that I want to share, and that is that because Lois built such an incredible program in City Lights, we will be continuing it. And Lois's last live show is going to be June 26th. So we'll stay tuned for more information. We'll send out information how you can take part or support it or enjoy it. And City Lights will continue after that.
Thank you for that. Well, we've spent 2 weeks as a club celebrating the arts. What engaging programs we've had. Next week, we're pivoting to education, and I'm very excited to share that we have Brandon Fleming coming to our club. Clark, you will tell us about how Brandon first emerged at this Rotary Club all those years ago. Lois, they are making a Broadway play about his story, cool. Miseducated. So that's a way to weave in the themes of celebrating the arts and what we'll be doing next week. Henry, it was only appropriate that you sang on this Arts Day. What a great job you did. Thank you so much. Don't forget about Rotary on the Road at Trillith Studios on the 21st. We've got retired Admiral John Kirby talking about national security issues on April the 28th. I want to remind everybody of the opportunity to assist members to get to and from Rotary. You can zap this QR code and sign up. John Morey, I know you were our very first volunteer. We appreciate your leadership. And with that, I will say to our panel, thank you so much for your time. It was very calming. Now I have to go back to work to talk about what's going on in the stock market. So thank you very much for that. I hope everybody has a great rest of your Monday, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.